There is no shortage of scam artists in true crime, but I'm guessing you've never heard of one quite like Caitlin Braun. For over 2 years, Caitlin Braun conned more than 50 birth workers into thinking that she was pregnant. I'm Kathleen Goldhar, and this week on Crime Story, I sit down with Sarah Trelevin, the host of The Con, Caitlin's Baby. Crime Story, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at -8 with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. RCMP are calling on officers from across the country to fill gaps in detachments in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The memo was sent out to serving members of the National Police Force and reservists, asking if anyone would be willing to work for a few weeks in the two prairie provinces. Assistant Commissioner Scott McMurchie is Manitoba's commanding officer. He says the force has a 15% vacancy rate in our province, and this is a temporary way to help out.
Give my folks, my employees here in Manitoba the opportunity to either really literally catch their breath, or if they've got some investigations that are a little bit more complex, just to give them some additional resources to take those initial calls for service so that they can focus on maybe the more complex investigations.
McMurchie says Mounties are also changing the policy, allowing recruits to choose the province they want to go to. The National Police Federation says another 100 new police officers are expected in Manitoba by September, and you can hear more about this coming up on CBC's Radio Noon, right after the news. The Royal Winnipeg Ballet has a new artistic director. Christopher Stowell was named as the successful candidate following a 9-month-long international search. He'll take over from Andre Lewis, who's retiring after leading the organization for nearly 3 decades. Stowell says landing this role is a dream come true.
I am so honored and delighted to be taking on this role and to be filling the very big shoes of Andre, and look forward to having him as a partner over the next couple of months so the transition is smooth. This is a Canadian gem of an organization, and I feel deeply, deeply honored to be taking on this role.
Originally from the United States, Stowell has deep roots in ballet as a dancer and an artistic director. Recently, he was the Associate Artistic Director of the National Ballet of Canada. Stowell begins his new job in Winnipeg this June. Ontario voters are going to the polls next month. Premier Doug Ford confirmed weeks of speculation, saying he would call an election 18 months ahead of schedule. Philip Lee Shannock has the story.
It would be an absolute disaster.
Doug Ford says he's the best choice to defend Ontario and Canada against U.S. President Donald Trump compared to his Liberal and New Democrat rivals.
Imagine Bonnie Crombie or Merritt Stiles sitting across from President Trump negotiating a deal.
Ontario Liberal leader Crombie says Ford's early election call is aimed at getting ahead of an RCMP investigation into connected developers who wanted to buy protected lands.
They're closing in on what happened in that $8 billion Greenbelt scandal.
But Ford says he needs a strong mandate to defend Ontario's economy against U.S. tariffs. New Democrat Merritt Stiles says it's already the Premier's job.
It is the mandate of a government to do that. You don't need another mandate.
Ford says he'll make it official next week, sending Ontarians to the polls on February 27th. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
And the Trump administration in the U.S. is expanding the use of a fast-track deportation power nationwide. That means immigration officers will be able to deport migrants without appearing before a judge. Overnight, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, confirmed agents arrested 538 people. Trump is already claiming success on his election pledge to crack down on undocumented immigrants.
We're getting the bad, hard criminals out. These are murderers. These are people that have been as bad as you get, as bad as anybody you've seen. We're taking them out first.
Critics are concerned lawful residents and even U.S. citizens could be deported by mistake. And they say not enough is being done to protect migrants genuinely at risk if returned to their homeland. And also, the Trump administration has pulled the security detail assigned to protect Dr. Anthony Fauci. He had a very public role advising the government on handling the COVID-19 pandemic and regularly receives death threats. Fauci has now hired and will pay for private security the National Institutes of Health had been paying. The Israeli army says it will not complete its withdrawal from southern Lebanon by the Monday deadline. The Netanyahu government accuses Lebanon of failing to fully enforce the ceasefire agreement. It ended more than a year of hostilities between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah. At its peak, 1.2 million people were forced out of their homes. And worldwide economic losses from natural disasters hit $368 billion last year. And here, the Insurance Bureau of Canada says the cost of insured damage caused by severe weather in 2024 totaled roughly $8.5 billion. And speaking of, a fierce storm has shut down parts of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. The sound of Storm Éowyn, which brought record-breaking winds gusting to 182 kilometers an hour in Galway one day. More than 90,000 homes in Ireland, more than 100,000 in Scotland have lost power. Businesses and schools remain closed, public transit shut down, and hundreds of flights were canceled. Less extreme weather today in Winnipeg, mainly cloudy with a few flurries and a high around -3. In Brandon, a high of -2 with flurries and wind. Dauphin, a high of -2 with flurries and wind. Flin Flon, snow at times, a high around -3 with wind. And in Thompson, a few flurries, a high of -5. You're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you. Happy Friday. Well, coming up this hour on the show, people love to share their favorite comfort food recipes when the cold sets in, but how do you create your favorite warming meals on a budget? We want to hear your favorite low-cost comfort foods. That's our call-in conversation coming up after 12:30. But this half hour on the show, a woman in Brandon is helping her fellow 60s scoop survivors share their stories. We're going to hear from her at 12:15. But up first, RCMP are calling in reinforcements to address a staffing shortage in Manitoba. We're going to hear from our province's RCMP commanding officer just ahead on Radio Noon. Well, come work in Manitoba or Saskatchewan for 2 weeks. That's what RCMP D and F divisions are asking officers across the country to do. A staffing shortage in both provinces led the RCMP to send out a memo last week calling out members and active reservists across the country for help. Scott McMurchie is Assistant Commissioner and Commanding Officer of the Manitoba RCMP. I spoke with him earlier today, and he told me why the memo was sent out.
It's not a secret that we have a number of vacancies in our frontline detachments. Internally within Manitoba, I have a team here that's working very hard in a number of aspects. They are putting together, so we're already doing some internal relief from other support units and branches that have a few more resources on hand, and we're rotating them up to fill shifts as and when needed in the north. So the purpose of this additional ask from outside of the division is basically just to augment what we're already doing and to give my folks, my employees here in Manitoba, the opportunity to either really literally catch their breath, or if they've got some investigations that are a little bit more complex, just to give them some additional resources to take those initial calls for service so that they can focus on maybe the more complex investigations. That's really the purpose of this. This is really just to augment what we're already doing internally.
What's the response been to the memo and our officers volunteering? What's been the response?
So I'm told we have a number of individuals that have made inquiries. I have a meeting on Monday with my admin and personnel folks just to see what those numbers are, when they're coming, and I have very, very skilled people, and I will leave them to their business terms of sorting out where those folks need to be deployed.
Mm-hmm. And when it is figured out, and if people do step up and come over, when would those new officers be arriving?
I'm assuming as soon as possible. And these folks coming from outside of Manitoba, much like what we're doing internally, they will be focused to go and serve in our northern communities.
In terms of right now, which communities need RCMP officers the most right now and are short?
Where we're seeing the biggest pressure and the biggest crunch is in our northern detachments. I won't get into specifics as to which ones, because it does change. With I've got a number of hard vacancies, so that's where I don't actually have an officer assigned to a position across many areas, but focusing on the north. We also have people that are off for medical reasons or other short term, so the numbers fluctuate quite regularly. So we have a team here in headquarters that is coordinating our internal relief to the north. So and they are literally not necessarily daily, but weekly conversations on forecasting where the pressure points are, and then that's where the additional resources will go.
And what about here in southern Manitoba? Is there any particular communities that are short RCMP?
Southern Manitoba is a little bit better. What is unique here in south, as compared to some of our communities in the north, which are very remote, if one detachment, if they've got a little bit of shortage, they've got their neighboring detachment, they can drive over and provide that support, provide that backup or assistance. Whereas in the north, our distances are greater, and then of course some of our communities are remote and they're fly-in only. So we have to ensure so there's no officers coming from the neighboring detachment, not able to drive there in half an hour or 20 minutes or what have it.
So how many vacancies do you have right now in Manitoba that you're hoping to fill?
Hard vacancies, I'm running about 15% overall. But what's unique about the RCMP, and this is where we're leveraging that uniqueness, is that within Manitoba, our officers, our members can pivot, can rotate, and go and serve in another community, in very short order. As well, the opportunity that the RCMP has to bring in resources from outside of a division, whether it's to meet, to respond to a critical incident, a large event. That's part of what the RCMP as a national police force can do.
In terms of what's contributing to kind of this staffing kind of crunch overall, you mentioned investigations. I know 2024 there were 58 homicides in Manitoba RCMP jurisdictions, and that was actually a jump from the 30 homicides and 3 suspicious deaths the year before, so nearly double. How much of this kind of staffing crunch you're kind of facing is because of those investigations?
That's a little bit because it's our major crime services that takes the lead on those investigations, but they do require the support from our frontline detachments where these offenses occur, and there's always tasks and different things that the detachment members are given to follow up on, and it could be guarding a crime scene, it could be various other tracking down witnesses, tracking down other people, helping major crime services gather evidence to put their cases together. So there is pressure that way in terms of our frontline operations. And really this stems from coming out of COVID, the COVID pandemic. They initiated what they call, I'm not sure the exact term, but we call it a preferred posting agreement. So cadet and applicants, when they go to training, they are allowed to pick the locations or pick the provinces in which they want to go and serve. So that was a great benefit to get our recruitment numbers up across the country, coast to coast to coast. However, it has been recognized that it has had an impact on the smaller divisions, or the medium divisions like Manitoba and Saskatchewan. What they are doing now is looking at ways to prioritize the applicants, RCMP applicants for Manitoba specifically, that we know will come back to Manitoba and serve in our communities.
I also know, there's this new emphasis on border security. How much has that pulled officers away from local detachments?
The border security, that's the mandate of our federal policing. That's their primary mandate. For myself, I look after really the provincial mandate. My main focus is we recognize that there may be persons seeking asylum trying to come across, but I don't want anybody to freeze and die. And we've had those unfortunate circumstances in the past. So if it's necessary that our police dog services or other frontline resources respond to that initial call and pick these folks up and then turn them over to the federal policing folks, and then they work with CBSA.
So this is clearly a short-term fix. In terms of long-term, what do you think? You mentioned a couple things that you're kind of doing in terms on the recruitment level, but what do you think needs to be done to make Manitoba a more appealing place for RCMP officers to work and stay?
It's selling our product. I've been to our training academy at Depot in Regina to promote and talk to recruits on base about the opportunities that Manitoba provides. Our frontline members are really our best ambassadors and our best salespeople per se. They're all recruiters. They're all actively recruiting people that they know in their communities that they see would potentially be a good fit for the RCMP. I would like to see, and really going to focus on applicants from the Indigenous communities and other diverse backgrounds, really.
That's Scott McMurtry, Assistant Commissioner and Commanding Officer of the Manitoba RCMP.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
$12:16 right now on Radio Noon, and just ahead we're going to hear how a woman is working to bring her fellow 60 Scoop survivors together in Brandon to share their stories. That's coming up right away. We're also going to open up the phone lines after 12:30 to ask what you cook when you need to cut costs, but not cut back on comfort. Cold weather calls for comfort food, and we want your recipes that cut costs but keep the comfort. So maybe a soup, a stew, a chili. We want to know. We're opening up the phone lines after 12:30. But right now, let's take a look at your fairly warm-ish weather across the province. Finally, that cold snap seems to have broken, and it's telling that Churchill is our cold spot actually right now in the province, but it's only -12, so that's as cold as it gets right now. You're seeing some light snow at the airport right now, Churchill. Brandon, you're seeing some drifting snow right now. You are sitting at -2. Flin Flon, some light snow for you, -3. Gillam at the airport, light snow, -12. Island Lake, light snow, and -10. McCreary, you've hit 0. You're our hotspot right now in the province. Norway House, light snow, -5. Portage at the airport, south, mostly cloudy. You're sitting at -2. To Dooley Lake, you are seeing some light snow right now, -11. The Pas, -2 with some light snow. Thompson, some light snow, and -8. And Winnipeg at the airport, mostly cloudy, -7. Well, growing up in a family that's not biologically your own, far away from the land of your ancestors, is a uniquely difficult experience. But it's something 60 Scoop survivors have all lived through in one way or another. And Nadine Swartout is among those survivors. She's also the 60 Scoop coordinator at Anish Healing Center and hosts sharing circles in Brandon for her fellow survivors. Good afternoon.
Hi.
So you actually, haven't always lived here in Canada. You grew up away, like many 60 Scoop survivors. What was that like for you coming home?
Yeah, it was interesting. It's definitely not an easy task to move back. Sometimes it's still hard, and it's been over a decade now. But but I'm happy to be home. I'm happy to be back here and doing the work that I do. I definitely think and wish for more supports for survivors that are coming home, and there are still survivors, 60 Scoop survivors coming home, and there are children of 60 Scoop survivors that are coming home, and there are survivors that want to come home, but they're scared or they don't know the best way.
What supports are there when people do come home here, in the way that they currently exist?
Yeah, honestly, there's not a whole lot of support. There's not any dedicated funding federally or provincially for 60 Scoop survivors when they come home. It's really up to the family of the survivors, the communities, the First Nations or Métis or Inuit communities, and the survivors. There are peer support groups available in different provinces, 60 Scoop societies or other organizations of survivors that have built up some of those supports, and they're there as well to help as they can. But there's not a whole lot for what we do at Anish. Is we can help with getting their post-adoption paperwork. We've built a good relationship with the Manitoba post-adoption program here in Manitoba. We can connect them with getting their treaty. We have a good relationship with Southern Chiefs status program. We've also are working with the Manitoba Métis Federation, 60 Scoop organization to help people that might be the route that they need to go to. But there's really not a whole lot.
On top of this, you're also hosting these sharing circles. What difference have these sharing circles made for you and the other 60 Scoop survivors who take part?
They're huge. It's so important to have space to be able to talk and share and be together. In Brandon, I would say there's always such a healing component. In all of our sharing circles, we host them in Brandon, Winnipeg, and online. Usually the same week, they'll all be together. It's huge. It's so important. There's such a healing aspect of listening to other people that have been through similar situations to yours, and there's a learning component to that, as well. When you're sitting there, people can talk about what they've done in their healing journeys that have helped them. That might be something that you take with you to help you in that. We're also inclusive of everybody, whether you're traditional in your culture and you're going back to that traditional way, whether you go to church, whether you are Buddhist or whatever. We're inclusive of everybody in their way that they heal.
Before I let you go here, if there happens to be a 60 Scoop survivor listening and they want to take part in these sharing circles, I know you've got a whole bunch more coming up later this month through February, March. What do they need to know, and how can they maybe sign up?
Yeah. So you don't really need to sign up. You can just show up. Feel free to come. If you are nervous and you want to bring a friend or a relative, bring them. You don't have to come alone. Yeah, you can just come if you want to meet me, if you want to talk to me before you come. You can reach out to me at Anish Healing Center. We're here. If you have relatives that are 60 Scoop that are in the States and they want to join online, we have the virtual sharing circle. It's all up to you and what you're comfortable with, and we'd love to have you.
Nadine, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. All the best.
Well, thanks for having us, and I hope we have a bunch of survivors coming to visit us soon.
Nadine Swartout is 60 Scoop coordinator at Anish Healing Center, and you can find more information on the Anish Healing Center Facebook page.
Manitoba is the kind of place that draws you in. Every day it's growing, it's changing. Just when you think you've got it figured out, though, there's something new to understand. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of the CBC Daily Podcast. This is Manitoba. I've covered the news from the rail line in Churchill to the border in Emerson, and it's talking about the local stories that help us understand this place. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. Find it on CBC Listen or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
12:23 right now, and if you've been keeping an eye on music news this week, you may know that the last surviving member of the legendary musical group, The Band, died earlier this week. Garth Hudson was 87. He was born in Windsor, Ontario, and began playing piano early in his life, as well as organ at church and his uncle's funeral parlor. He attended what was then the University of Western Ontario to study music. Then in the early 60s, Hudson would eventually be persuaded to join Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks, the group that would morph into The Band. Hudson was a master of many instruments, but might be best remembered for his talent on the Lowry organ. And you can hear it on this track from The Band on a tune written by Robbie Robertson. This is Stage Fright on CBC Radio 1.
Now deep in the heart of a lonely kid, he suffered so much for what he did. They gave this bellboy his fortune and fame. Since that day he ain't been the same. See the man with the stage fright, just standing up there to give it all his might. And he got caught in the spotlight. But when we get to the end, you want to start all over again. I've got fire water right on my breath, and the doctor warned me I might catch a death. He said you can make it in your disguise, just never show the fear that's in your eyes. See the man with the stage fright, just standing up there to give it all his might. He got caught in the spotlight, but when we get to the end, he wants to start all over again. Now if he says that he's afraid, take him at his word. And for the price that the poor boy has paid, he gets to sing just like a bird. Oh. Your brow is sweating and your mouth gets dry. Fancy people go drifting by. Moment of truth is right at hand. Just one more nightmare you can stand. See the man with the stage fright, just standing up there to give it all his might. He got caught in the spotlight, but when we get to the end, he wants to start all over again. You want to try it once again. Please don't make him stop. Let him take it from the top. Let him start all over again.
That's The Band with Stage Fright. Garth Hudson from Windsor, Ontario was the last surviving member of the band. He died at the age of 87.
CBC Music Live. Head into the big venues, intimate concert halls, and small stages. Celebrate live music the way it was meant to be. Share in an unmistakable energy of being shoulder to shoulder with music fans and face to face with some of Canada's best musicians.
It's such an honor and a pleasure to play here.
CBC Music Live, brand new season. And catch past episodes right now on CBC Jam.
Right now, Winnipeg, we're sitting at -7, but we are going to be heading for a high today of -2, which feels tropical compared to what we've had the past few days. And the weekend's looking pretty good too, -12. is the high on Saturday. -5 is the high on Sunday, and sunny overall. So compared to many other weekends, I think we're in for finally a good weekend to get out, maybe head to your favorite trail with the fam, and just maybe go skating or tobogganing. Finally, it feels like winter weather that doesn't hurt so darn bad. It's the same case across the province. Thompson, your high tomorrow -10. Sunday is a high of 0. Believe it or not. Dauphin, your high is -8 on Saturday and a high -3 on Sunday. And Brandon, your high on Saturday is -12 and your high on Sunday -4. So lovely temperatures ahead across the board. We're going to have Riley Lachuk join us shortly to give us a more in-depth forecast for you. But stay tuned. Coming up just ahead, what do you cook when you need to cut costs but not cut back on comfort? Cold weather calls for comfort food, and we want your recipes that cut costs but keep the comfort. We're opening up the phone lines. What's your recipe? 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Call us now. We may get you on the air after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're -7 with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A call has gone out to RCMP officers across Canada to find people willing to rotate into Manitoba and Saskatchewan because of a staffing crunch. The memo asking for current members and reservists went out last week. Manitoba Commanding Officer Scott McMurchie says there's a 15% vacancy rate at detachments in our province. They are also dealing with a record number of homicide investigations, which has stretched staffing thin. McMurchie says longer term, the National Police Force is changing its preferred posting agreement for recruits.
They are allowed to pick provinces in which they want to go and serve. So that was a great benefit to get our recruitment numbers up across the country, coast to coast to coast. However, it has been recognized that it has had an impact on the smaller divisions.
The National Police Federation says some of the vacancy issues in Manitoba will be eased because they're expecting 100 new officers to be deployed here by September. An Osborne Village business owner was shocked to find the front window of her building smashed early this morning. Arden Coy owns Rooster on Osborne Street. She says a vehicle hit a hydro pole, plowed into the window of the store, and then drove away. Winnipeg police confirmed there was a crash shortly after 6 this morning, but had yet to attend to the incident. Coy says the front window is completely gone.
Someone actually, a good Samaritan in the office above us, he saw, I think he came a bit after it happened, and he ended up watching the store for us. But yeah, nothing was stolen that we know of. We're still checking footage and stuff.
Coy's family owns Rooster, Silver Lotus, and Small Mercies, all in the village. They had a fire in another store in the past year. She hopes to reopen the store once the front window is boarded up. Steinbach Mounties say a mother is facing parental abduction charges after trying to take her children to Turkey. Police say last night they were contacted by a father who had tried to pick up his 2 young daughters from school but couldn't find them. The Labrokery man believed his wife had left with the 12 and 8-year-old and was trying to leave the country. Police figured out the mother and daughters had flown from Winnipeg to Toronto. Police then found the mother trying to board a flight to Turkey out of Pearson International. The 45-year-old mother was taken into custody and charged. She's set to appear in Manitoba court. And the Royal Winnipeg Ballet has a new artistic director. Christopher Stowell was announced by the RWB this morning. He'll take over this summer from Andre Lewis, who's wrapping up a career spanning about 50 years, including almost 30 as artistic director. Lewis says the selection committee made a good choice.
When I found out that they had selected Christopher Stowell, I knew the organization would be in capable, talented, and innovative hands. And on top of that, Christopher is someone I have deep respect for as a colleague.
It's the first time in recent memory the RWB has hired a full-time artistic director from outside the company. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That is Matt Humphrey at our CBC News desk. Welcome back to Radio Noon. I'm Corey Funk, and we have with us here with some good weather news, I think, overall. Watch, you're going to be like, well, actually, Corey. But Riley Lachuk's in to let us know what's ahead in this fairly lovely
So, you
forecast.
know, I will share one thing with you. I booked next week off, so naturally I had to forecast some good weather.
Oh, I knew it. I knew there was a bias there.
Yeah. -7 in Winnipeg right now. now. But let's just compare that to what we're seeing a little bit further west. Portage La Prairie, not even an hour down the highway from where we're sitting right now, -2 at the moment. So 5-degree difference just a little bit down the road here. We are looking at some of that warmth making its way a little further east as we get into the afternoon. -2s in Brandon and Dauphin right now, -1 in Swan River. Thompson at the moment at -8. We have seen a few flurries. We did see a few flurries early this morning across southern Manitoba. A few more yet to come through the day today, so don't be surprised if you do see a few flurries, a few snowflakes through the afternoon. Even into the evening hours tonight, I think we still have that chance of a scattered flurry out of some of this cloud cover that's been hanging around. And we will keep this cloud cover, and that's what's going to help keep us a little bit on the warmer side here as we get through the overnight hours into the day on Saturday. We'll start to get a bit of clearing as we get into Saturday. With that, a slight dip in temperatures back towards seasonal as we get through Saturday, which is around -12 for this time of the year. But we'll rebound as we get into Sunday. Certainly as we get into Monday, looking at some considerably warmer temperatures. Maybe a few more flurries or some light snow into Thompson and along the Hudson Bay coast as we get through Saturday, particularly into Sunday, looking at another weak disturbance moving along the Hudson Bay coast, which could bring, by the time we get to this time Sunday, maybe 4 or 5 centimeters of snow to Churchill, Shamattawa, 2 to 4 for places like Thompson. Really nothing more than a dusting coming for the rest of us across the province. What you will feel, though, particularly into Saturday, is that gusty northwesterly wind behind this system. That is going to help cool our temperatures tomorrow. And I'm not talking about a return into the deep freeze, but certainly it'll be a bit cooler than it is out there today. Looking at winds, northwest 20 gusting to 40 through the weekend tomorrow, dying off a bit as we get into Sunday, but still maybe a little bit breezy. Temperatures this afternoon, -2s, -3s in the Red River Valley, -2s and -1s more like into the western side of the province. Could even crack the freezing mark in some places in extreme western Manitoba this afternoon. So a slight dip tomorrow, back to -9 through the afternoon, -5 for Sunday, 0 for Monday, maybe a few more flurries coming our way Tuesday with a high of -1. So a pretty good stretch of weather if you don't like the cold.
That's good to know. Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
That is Riley Lachuk, our CBC weather specialist. Well, time now for our call-in conversation, and it has been pretty cold lately, and maybe you're hibernating, maybe you're streaming a show or reading a book, or maybe you're cooking some of your favorite comfort foods, but food, is pretty expensive these days. So how are you making the meals you love to eat when it's frigid that also cut costs? We want to hear from you. Maybe it's a family recipe, or maybe it's something you tried out recently. Call us, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Or you can text us as well, 204-580-7355, or 588, 204-588-7355. Harriet Zaidman is our guest today, joining me in studio, and she's an author and North End Nosh food blogger. That's the name of her blog, North End Nosh. Hello there, Harriet.
Hello.
So you actually brought some treats in with us. So these are they're really light, they're fluffy. They got some sugar on them. Can you tell us what they are?
Well, they're called kichelech is the Yiddish word, and in English it's nothings, which is a lot easier to pronounce.
And does that translate into nothings in Yiddish?
I don't know. I have no idea. But they're made of fresh eggs. If you use eggs that have been in the fridge for a while, they don't come out as high. But if you make them with fresh eggs, they puff right up. And if you get the eggs right out of the chicken, they're even puffier.
Oh, and they're delicious. It almost and it kind of tastes like they don't taste like nothing, but they feel like nothing. It's kind of like a nice not
gives
too
you
heavy.
the excuse to have two.
I was going to say 5, but
yeah.
So besides these nothings, what are some of your favorite comfort foods that are also inexpensive to make?
Well, there's a huge number. It depends. First of all, it depends on your taste. But of course, the go-to thing you can make in winter is soup. And you can make soup in a million ways, and you just change the flavorings, like the herbs that you use or something like that. So I can make a vegetable soup, and I can make it sort of plain chicken soupy, or I can make it with basil and oregano and things like this. You make it more Italian. And I have to say, one of the soups that I make that is like from my childhood is my mom used to chop up a potato, grate in a carrot and some celery, and you just you can either cover them with a little water fresh or saute them first, and then pour in a can of creamed corn and a can of milk. And then you add a little butter to make it a little richer, and you've got a really good soup. I've made that all my life. I made it for my kids. I make it still.
Yeah, I think it's easy to assume people who don't cook often that you need to make something really delicious. It needs to be this complex, fancy thing. But sometimes I find, especially as I get older, I've done more cooking, the simpler almost is where it's at.
That is ready in 15 minutes.
Amazing. That's the best.
And it is delicious.
Okay, that's great. I'll share mine because if you want to share yours, it could be soup recipes or not. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. In my family, it's always been chicken noodle soup, but it's a special recipe. You put the chicken in, but the herb that we use that really makes it stand out, and whenever I have chicken noodle soup now, I'm almost upset that it's not in there, is aniseed.
Oh.
Yeah, if you put a little bit of aniseed in your chicken soup, it just lifts it. And I don't know. And now when I have a soup, I'm just it needs aniseed in there if I'm having chicken noodle soup. Yeah,
that's interesting.
And I think it's a Mennonite thing actually.
Maybe.
So that's what we learned. So how would you describe the kind of cook that you are? Would you say that you're a fancy cook? Or that yeah. What kind of cook are you?
Well, I just like to cook, and so so it's interesting how it's just sometimes you want to make something a little more complicated because it looks adventurous, but you can make something out of nothing, and everything you've got in the hamper, in the cupboard, in the fridge, can be turned into something different all the time. And so what I have enjoyed doing is taking things like instead of just using pasta as a base, and you can roast vegetables. Well, that's one thing is I always roast vegetables now. I rarely steam them. I'll roast them or put them on a pan, but roasting them just sort of brings out more flavor, puts a little oil on them and toss them around with some salt and pepper. And then you put a base out of, say, rice, or there's so many beautiful grains we get now, farro and, couscous and all these bulgur wheats and buckwheat or whatever. You put that as a base and the vegetables, and you can create a dressing of any different kind. Either it could be honey mustard, it could be a garlic, oregano, whatever you like, balsamic vinegar. And then maybe take some either feta cheese or some kind of cheese or yogurt that you maybe put in cumin or curry or any kind of flavoring like that to add some zip or lemon. And you've got a really nice supper. And put it on a bed of greens. Always, I do it all on a plate. I like my dish to look good.
Yeah.
So it looks fancier to me if it's built up on a plate and if you have colors popping.
Right. And then you kind of feel you got your salad built in there too.
Yeah.
You've actually shared hundreds of your recipes on your site, including recipes for bread, desserts, lots of vegetables. But how much do you actually use leftovers in your cooking?
I use whatever I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use whatever I have because why not?
Is there like a particular leftover recipe that you?
Well, chicken pot pie is is an example.
Okay.
If you have some chicken and you can even, you don't want to make it right away because you've had enough chicken, put it in the freezer for 2 weeks or wherever long. And then you've got an easy pie to make. And chicken pot pie is really not hard. It's just a creamed chicken with vegetables in it. And then you take one pastry lid, and you can either buy the pastry lid or make it yourself, pop it on top and bake it. And it's a really good, nourishing and filling meal that can feed a whole bunch of people.
I can tell you, for me, that my favorite leftover thing, I used to work at a camp, and we would have oatmeal in the morning, and I knew that by the evening, the women who worked it was a particular week where these women would come, and I knew when we had oatmeal and they were volunteering in the kitchen, that by the evening we'd have bread with the leftover oatmeal.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, and I didn't actually know you could do that.
Yes,
and I'm actually not a big oatmeal guy, but I was excited to see the oatmeal because I'm like, we're having good bread tonight. So it's amazing what you can do with leftover oatmeal.
Yeah.
In terms of just cost savings, maybe some even stuff that was fairly affordable a couple of years ago actually is a lot more pricey now. Do you have any tips for finding the good, cheap foods that are nutritious, but also comforting and cozy?
Well, as I suggest, things like that, like to make, you can use like carrots, parsnips, all the vegetables we grow in Manitoba. You can roast them and turn them into beautiful dishes. And cabbage is something like there's just some really interesting sautéed cabbage recipes. And one that I made, it was just wonderful. You make it you saute it first, and then you make a tomato sauce, a very thick tomato sauce, and then you can pop an egg on top, and you've got this great interesting meal. For cabbage has sort of become a new trendy kind of vegetable, and there's a lot you can do with it.
And it goes a long way. I buy a head of cabbage and I'll make off a little slice, and it just like explodes into like you can use a lot with one cabbage. That makes a lot of sense. 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893 is the number to call if you want to share your recipe. Those phone lines are open. How's your approach to shopping and cooking shifted over the years? As maybe prices change, or you just learn more about how to cook well and with frugality in mind? Well,
you certainly do learn more, but as prices have risen so dramatically the last couple of years, there's just things I just don't buy anymore.
Like
so
what?
Well, I love fruit, so but I haven't bought many grapes in the last while because the cost is so much. And pomegranate and mango. They've been and avocados, are very pricey. So, and beef is really pricey now. So, you just don't buy it as much, and you just make do with other things. And one plug I want to give to a vegetable or a legume is lentils. Like lentils are delicious. That's not something I grew up with at all. But there's so many different kinds now that it's like, whoa, every different color, and they each have a different, like they have a different ability. For instance, red legumes, they get soft extremely quickly. They're very good for a fast soup. Throw a carrot in there and you've got this great, delicious soup, maybe some ginger. It's delicious. And but green, brown, yellow, like there's just so many, and you just wait a little longer and it's soft very quickly, but really, really flavorful and nutritious.
Yeah, easy protein.
And soup or a main dish.
Okay. Yeah, and protein's big these days, so and lentils are a quick way to get that. People share recipes with you. What are some great low-cost comfort foods that you've had shared with you that you might want to highlight?
Well, people have given me things like lentil recipes and just delicious ones. Well, I've got one for chana masala. Well, there's an opportunity to change your to be adventurous, because things like lentils take you into other worlds. So you can go to Mideastern cooking and East Indian cooking, so chickpeas and things like that. So I've picked up great flavors from people through those kinds of ingredients. So delicious things. And they're so easy. And you can't, I used to think, well, I can't do that because I really, an East Indian restaurant does it so well. But yes, you can.
How much do you rely on cookbooks versus just your own kind of cooking instincts these days? Like as you get more experience, are you just you find stuff, you throw it together and you make it work? Or how often are you actually seeking out recipes and following them by the book?
I seek recipes out all the time, but with experience, you understand the chemistry of food, and you know what will work or what not. Not like there are sometimes mistakes in recipes, so think before you make it. But read the recipe, understand it, and you'll be able to adapt it to your own. I mean, that's what everybody does: is they adapt it to their own taste.
Right. And before I let you go here, what are you cooking this weekend?
Well, this weekend, actually, someone's cooking for me, so I'm really quite happy about it. Well, I'm baking this weekend. One thing I'd actually like to give a plug for is easy to make bread that a lot of people are afraid of yeast. But there are a couple incredibly easy breads. Beautiful breads are pretty pricey now. And so I've got a few recipes on my blog. One is called artisan bread, French bread or artisan bread. And what you do, bread is really basically flour, yeast, water, and salt. So you just mix those up the night before. Just mix them up. And when you come in the morning, instead of looking like glue, it's going to look like this bubbly mess. And there's just instructions on, you toss it in flour for about a minute. You do not knead it. There are people who are afraid of kneading. Do not knead it. And pour it into on a pan or a pot, and you get this huge, incredibly delicious French artisan bread with massive holes. It's just delicious. And I came across one very, like almost no work. You make the mess the night before, but then you don't toss it in flour. You just divide it into however many pieces you want, and bake it on a cooling rack. You put some parchment paper on a cooling rack, and I did it in the form of ciabatta, so sandwich loaves.
Yeah.
And they just puffed right up. I had 4 or 5 sandwich loaves. They're huge, and I did no work. I was sort of waiting, like my hands were busy.
I've told my people I've made bread in my day, and they ask like, it sounds like a lot of work. It's like, no, the yeast does the work. All you gotta do is just kind of coax it along.
Yeah,
so.
But this is no knead, and people don't understand. Some people are afraid of kneading. They don't get it. But this is no work, and you'll save yourself a lot of money. Like bread, a beautiful bread can cost anywhere between $5 and $8, and this costs you a little bit of flour.
That's fun.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, Harriet, thanks for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's Harriet Zaidman. She is an author and food blogger. Her blog is called North and Nosh.
The cold of winter melted by an array of floral artistry to warm your soul. Fleur de Ville Artiste comes to the Leaf at Assiniboine Park January 16th to 26th. Be dazzled by figurines decorated in flowery fashions, designed by Manitoba's vibrant art scene and blossoming floral talent. Fleur de Ville Artiste, proudly sponsored by CBC. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
12:49 right now on Radio Noon. And Juno-nominated Don Amaro will be releasing a series of 6 song EPs over the next year. And the first album of the series, Broken Record Part 1, Heart, will be available February 28th. And from that, the first single, this is Don Amaro with Break the Glass.
Never seem to listen to the ground beneath their feet, to the voices in the oceans, to the whispers in the trees. Now the water's rising, it's getting hard to breathe. It's not my problem, till it's breaking over me. Time's up, break the glass. I hear the wall of the dam just cracked. Put your heart in the burlap sack. You better be ready when the flood comes back. Walls are not the answer when the bottom's caving in. This tide won't stop coming. It's gonna be sink or swim. Ooh, waist deep in the water, there ain't no higher ground. Ooh, Lord, if we're still worth it, have mercy on us now. Time's up, break the glass. I hear the wall of the dam just cracked. Put your heart in the burlap sack. You better be ready when the flood comes. Time's up, break the glass. I hear the wall of the dam just cracked. It's a little too late to get your life on track. You better be ready when the flood comes back. Just cracked. Put your heart in the burlap sack. You better be ready. Time's up, break the glass. I hear the wall of the dam just cracked. It's a little too late to get your life on track. You better be ready when the flood comes. Time's up, break the glass. I hear the wall of the dam just cracked. Put your heart in the burlap sack. You better be ready
Winnipeg. That's Don Amaro with the song Break the Glass. Look out for his EP dropping on February 28th. Well, next up on the show, author Nancy Silcox has written about famous Canadians and their pets, and about animals with jobs, as well as tales of Canadian pioneers. And now the Southern Ontario author is looking for stories about unusual felines, and she explains why to CBC Radio.
My idea was, again, that I would talk to people across the country. I'm aiming for 50 from Newfoundland up to the Arctic out to BC. And we're talking about cats who are special. Cats that perhaps have made the news. Cats who have perhaps saved people, rescued people. Cats who have a job. And so, of course, I think it's really important that people know that when I write these pet books, all the money does go to pet rescue organizations. When I did the book for OVC a number of years ago, that was when they were building their cancer clinic at the vet college. And the book did very, very well. And all the proceeds of that went to help, build the clinic. The books have also been great help to SPCA's St. John's Ambulance Therapy Dogs. But cats, I knew that would be a challenge. Dogs are easier to perhaps locate and recognize, but it's amazing the number of cats. What I am aiming for, again, is 50. Mm-hmm. I'm in my first 10. The very first cat that I interviewed, or his person, was Cole. And this was just several weeks ago. Cole is the last surviving cat of the cat colony that lived on Parliament Hill. There were 15 of them or so, and then they decided to disperse them, and one cat remains, and he's with a very, very loving owner. I've also talked to Gary in Calgary. Gary he's quite he's quite an athlete. He has his own goggles. He has his own coat, and they ski. He's the mascot of a ski resort. I'm looking for shop cats, for cats in school, cats who are in prison. Apparently, they're prison therapy cats, performers. They can email me. My email address is canadapetbook@gmail.com. It doesn't have to be a Gary. It's cats who really make a mark.
That's Canadian author Nancy Silcox. So if you have a cat story you think the rest of the country should know about, you can email Nancy at canadapetbook. That's canadapetbook@gmail.com. Or you can even let us know too, because I want to hear if you got a good, impressive cat of some sort. Just email us radio893. That's radio893 @cbc.ca. Chloe Friesen is in, and she's also a cat owner. Does your cat have a job?
I have two cats, Wallace and Gromit. Gromit's job is just creating chaos and being in trouble all the time. Wallace loves laundry.
Doing the laundry?
We'll pretend that's the case. Like every time I dump out the clean laundry and I go to fold it, every time I fold a shirt, he pounces on it. Okay. And so I think he's like helping me fold it. He's patting it down.
He's trying his best.
He's trying his best. So Wallace does the laundry.
My cat also, Giorgio, I'm trying to think if he has any sort of employable qualities, but not so much. He's sweet. He's
just
cute.
A chill guy.
He's a nice guy. Yeah. Exactly. But we're not here to talk about cats. You're actually hosting Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. And what kind of stories can folks expect?
Corey, I think you in particular and a lot of other Manitobans are going to find this incredibly interesting. We're going to speak to someone who's well on his way to completing the Grand Slam Challenge. So that's reaching the North Pole and the South Pole and climbing all of the 7 summits.
Wow.
This is Winnipegger Dilip Shekhawat. He's gotten the poles out of the way, along with Everest. got the hard stuff out of the way. He's back home after completing 2 more peaks. And we're going to hear about his latest journey and the Canadian hero who inspires him.
I've run a couple races with a Dalip, and he is hardcore.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
Tune in. His stories are incredible.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned for that. Thank you very much, Chloe. That is Chloe Friesen. You can catch her on Up to Speed from 3 to 6. That's a wrap for Radio Noon. Thanks to Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst, Wendy Parker, Kevin Nipatebo for all your hard work on the show this week. I'm Corey Funk, coming up on CBC Radio 1, CBC Podcast Showcase. Have a nice, warm, lovely weekend.